Hi, this is Cal Ripken Jr., and you're listening to the ML Sports Platter.
The ML Sports Platter back with you all over the major platforms like Spotify, Google, Apple, Stitcher, Deezer, you name it. Download, subscribe, leave feedback, and a 5-star review. We are brought to you by Brian Comboy of MassMutual New York State. Tax-efficient retirement planning. Go with Brian today. Advisors.massmutual.com. That's advisors.massmutual.com. Find him on Facebook. Find him on LinkedIn. Brian really gets it done. Maybe you're planning a retirement or a youngster's going to college here in the not-too-distant future. Get your financial assets in order with Brian Comboy of MassMutual New York State. Advisors.massmutual.com. Tip of the cap, thank you as well to the Al and Angus Pub, the Vince Aguirre Consulting Group, Welch and Company Jewelers, and Camillus Golf Club. Go play Camillus if you're in and around Central New York, the greater state of New York. A lot of people like to travel to go play golf. I traveled out to Rochester a couple weeks ago to go play. I meet people all the time at Camillus who travel each week from Rochester to come play the course. They love it, and why wouldn't you? It's a shot maker's course. It's a spectacular 18. The greens are awesome. They're rolling. It's green as green can be. And they've got a tremendous array of food after your round as well. Burgers and wraps and entrees. Great beers on tap in the can and in the bottle as well. So make sure you head on over to Camillus Golf Club since 1962. Camillus Golf Club. CamillusHillsGolfClub.com is the website. Camillus Golf Club is the official ML Sports Platter Golf Course for 2021. Before I bring in my man Stephen Bailey, who covers Syracuse football for 247 Sports, we're going to get into name, image, and likeness, the Dome lifting the restrictions. We're going to get into all sorts of stuff, recruiting, and kind of set up the season a little bit, what to expect from camp. And obviously they're coming off of the most physical spring of the Dino Babers era, practice-wise as well. So we'll get into that and much, much more. But I wanted to spend about 5 minutes on the Yankees and just saying that, you know, I think the proof is in the pudding at this particular point. Now, will they do it? They're idiots. Probably not. Look where they are now. I've been barking up the fire Brian Cashman tree for, 15, 16 years. They probably won't do this. I don't think it's really smart to tread water. I think this is a 2016 kind of year. And I think Brian Cashman needs to wake up, and I think he needs to reset again. And when you reset this time, the problem is going to be you still have Giancarlo Stanton. You still have a lot of, you got a couple of bad eggs on this team, a couple of bad contracts. But what I do know, and trust me, there are a lot of players who are not wanted. I mean, Major League Baseball teams, who wants Clint Frazier? A guy who has completely and utterly torpedoed down the baseball mountain in terms of his skill set, can't field his position, can't hit. Remember that lightning quick bat speed that we heard about? Where has that gone? He's now got vertigo as well. So Clint Frazier has zero value. Miguel Andujar, does he have any value whatsoever? The Yankees just throwing him in left field is irresponsible. He went from a guy who almost won Rookie of the Year to injured to now he's like completely and utterly useless and inconsistent. Who has value here? Does somebody want Rougned Odor at the deadline? The only guys to me you probably have a little bit of value with would be if you're going to give up on like a Jordan Montgomery and you wanted to trade him and you wanted to move maybe like, I wouldn't trade Gio Urshela. I wouldn't trade DJ LeMahieu. If somebody wanted them, I would keep those guys. I would trade Luke Voit. I'd get rid of these guys. And now all of a sudden, because the Yankees ruined Gleyber Torres by putting him at shortstop and not second, and with their analytical approach to the game to swing for the fences, between the mind games that they've played with Gleyber Torres and his inability to get the job done as well, Gleyber Torres is, to me, not untouchable anymore. I think there was a time, and 5 years ago the Yankees got him, and that's when many people, including me, and I talk to Matt Michael all the time about this, we thought Cashman figured it out. He traded Andrew Miller to Cleveland, got a haul of prospects. Clint Frazier was in that group. Justice Sheffield was in that group. Ben Heller was in that group. He trades Chapman to the Cubs. You get Gleyber Torres back. You thought just then and there, holy crap, they figured it out. They go on the Cinderella run in 2017, and bing, bang, boom, they go trade for Giancarlo Stanton. And since that point, here we are. right? Well, the time is now for a reset. This team is not good. This team is poor defensively. They're built the wrong way. They're constructed with a severely dominant right-handed order. It's home run or bust. They make so many mistakes in the field, so many mistakes on the base paths, hitting a million double plays. The starting pitching is completely now tanked. You're either injured or inconsistent with the starters, or you're Garrett Cole, and you can't do anything without the Spider Tech grip, or your Chapman in the bullpen can't do anything without the Spider Tech grip. And the bullpen's getting absolutely taxed now because the starting pitching is going down the baseball cliff, as I predicted months ago. Are you going to be able to count? I mean, Justin Wilson, trash. Darren O'Day, garbage, right? Like, Jonathan Loaizaga has been good, but he's going to get taxed. Like, what is Michael King right now? Who knows? Domingo Araman, no. Inconsistent, wildly inconsistent. He's also a scumbag off the field. Chapman's been a disaster. Cole's now a disaster. I mean, come on. What are you going to do? Throw Luis Cessa out there every 5 days now and try that again? I mean, the best pitcher on the team is Nestor Cortez. What does that say about this team? This team is a joke. Who can you trade? It's not even like who do you trade? Who can you trade? Because if I would still trade, I mean, I know Gary Sanchez just had his regular, flash in the pan, and now he'll probably, after the All-Star break, hit 110. But I would trade Sanchez. Here are the guys I would trade. If you could trade them, I would trade them. Gary Sanchez, Gleyber Torres, because if you're not going to use him right, why have him on the roster? Luke Voigt, Andujar. I would look into Jordan Montgomery, and I would start shopping Aaron Judge. If somebody's losing their mind, what do you mean? You've already got Aaron Judge with Giancarlo Stanton. Giancarlo Stanton drives me crazy, and he swings for the hills and all the rest. I know Aaron Judge is a better player. He's a more complete player. I know there's a lot of Yankee fans who are going to be listening to this going, you are absolutely out of your mind. You've lost it. Aaron Judge has actually had a really good season. He's got 81 hits, and he's got potential to have almost a 200-hit season, 40 home runs, right? Like hit around 275 to 290, right? The OPS could sneak over 1,000. His OBP is still kind of low, actually. But again, if you look at some of these numbers in the non-analytical world and go outside OBP for a little bit and kind of, capture real baseball, Aaron Judge has been pretty formidable, and he's played actually a pretty darn good right field as well. But the thing is, his contract is up this year, and the Yankees still don't know what the hell they want to do with him. Clearly, they're super confused on what to do with him because they haven't signed him to a long-term extension. If you trade Aaron Judge to a major contender, especially in the National League, and he's a rental-type guy, and then he just hits free agency, somebody pick him up. Can you get 5 major prospects from the Atlanta Braves for him? Can you trade him to, I don't know, even somebody in the AL? I mean, could you trade him to would the Angels take him and you could get 3, 4, 5 major prospects? Could you trade him to, I don't know. I mean, can you get him over to the National League? Would the Cardinals take on Aaron Judge and give you 2 of their farm guys who are ready to pitch and 2 guys who you can plug and play in the order and get a little bit more versatile? I mean, could you do that? I don't know. I would look at everything here, and the Yankees are so bad that, and they proved nothing to me in terms of being able to do anything in the post. Even if they turn it around and win the division or make the playoffs, they're going to get bounced in the playoffs. They're going to get exposed. And Kevin Kernan on Twitter just tweeted this out. The Yankees have the 15th best record in Major League Baseball and are losing the Battle of New York to the Mets. There's no question about it. Absolutely no question about it. The ML Sports Platter brought to you by the Allen Angus Pub, Liverpool Physical Therapy, and Barks and Rec Doggy Daycare. Let's bring him in. He covers Syracuse football, men's basketball, recruiting, as well for both sides for 247 Sports. He is a Syracuse grad, of course, in 2014. Been doing a really, really nice job for years. My good buddy Stephen Bailey on Twitter at Stephen_Bailey, the number 1. Go give him a follow. Stephen, welcome back, buddy. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
So let's start with name, image, and likeness, of course. I love having you on. How do you think this will impact Orange sports? Football, basketball, the ACC when it gets to a point. How will it affect the teams, the town? Just kind of give me your overall thinking here, peering into the NIL future.
Sure. Well, I think looking strictly at Olympic sports is great. I think there's a lot of athletes who really don't have an opportunity to make money, after college. So there's a chance for them to do some of that and to improve their brand, and that may carry over into whatever they do want to do. Looking at football and men's basketball, which you'll probably see some of the bigger deals just because of visibility. I think it's very, very different. I think football players will see some of that value, but I don't think it's going to help Syracuse in recruiting. I've gotten asked that a lot. I don't think necessarily because Syracuse is a smaller market with no professional sports, but the football program is so prominent that the average SU football player will make more than maybe a BC player, where you've got all the major sports in Boston. So I've seen that kind of go back and forth, and I'm certainly interested to see how it plays out. But I don't think from a competitive advantage standpoint, it's really going to affect the football program significantly. I think on the basketball side, you could see some of that. Obviously, Syracuse basketball is a national brand. Yeah. I'm sure they'd like to tell you it's an international brand. But you've already seen some of those guys jump on Cameo, Jimmy and Buddy Boeheim, Cole Swider. I'm sure you'll see Benny Williams. If he wants to do that, he kind of has the reach to do that. So I think there are some more legs on that side of things that could really be an asset for Syracuse. You look kind of around the ACC, obviously Duke's going through a coaching change, North Carolina is going through a coaching change. Depending on how all that plays out, Syracuse is going to go through a coaching change at some point. Maybe that brand is something that can hold some weight. And a couple years down the line, when your rising juniors in high school see how much money, the people who came before them made at various schools, maybe that's something that helps the men's basketball program out. But, everyone's kind of prognosticating, and we're going to need a couple years to kind of see those numbers. But it's really interesting. And, obviously it's a win for athletes across the country, and it was a long time coming.
I've always thought that name, image, and likeness was the way to go, because I think when everybody on the side, Stephen, of let's pay these players in college sports, I just thought there was too much of a gray area. How do you distinguish, somebody on the rowing team with the star basketball player who moves the needle, the star football player in the SEC like a Tua, or a Reggie Bush type from the past, or Johnny Manziel? How do you you've got those guys, but then you also have to go pay your D1 lacrosse guy, and we're going to keep it even, Steven, and everybody's going to get paid the same amount. Well, you can't do that, because some of the sports move the needle to the degree that they bring in so much money that they support all the other sports. We all get paid at different levels in our country anyway, in many different fields. I always thought this was the way to go, because now you don't have to mess as much with the Title IX thing, which is a whole other conversation, paying athletes. People can just go use their name, image, and likeness. I mean, they can go sign autographs at an autograph store or a memorabilia store for an hour and collect $5-10 if they want. Every level is different. You're almost an entrepreneur, so to speak. And I think, these kids will also maybe learn a little bit of the business side of things as they move along in life. I've always thought that this is the better way than paying players simply based upon the fact that you can't really get it consistent, and the gray area will never go away. What do you think of that?
Well, I think that is at the very least a good first step, and I think we're going to find out what the value of those different players is. I agree with you. You need to make it realistic for colleges. You can't, you go through this argument with stipends. If you're paying, you got to give it to everyone. You do the stipends. When the argument for paying players, you kind of have varying levels of that. So I think this is a really good way to identify the value of different athletes. Like I said, how much is a Syracuse football player going to make? I honestly don't know. We've seen a couple, I've seen guys post, they've got agreements with, gyms. Josh Black just posted that he wings over athletes. So, it's good for details to come out. What does that mean? Does he get a free pound of wings every other week? Or, or someone cutting him a check. My guess would be the former, but we're going to need some time to figure that out. I mean, I still think, if you're Benny Williams or you're a big college sports star that is selling tickets and putting butts in seats, you're still going to feel like you're not getting the value you deserve. But obviously, when you look at the player pool for the NCAA, that's a very, very small percentage. So I think this will allow everyone to see what the value of individuals is and how strongly they want to push for, more fair representation in their revenue a few years down the line is yet to be seen. Obviously, this conversation is not going away, but like I said, I think this was long overdue, and I think it'll set the table kind of for what's next.
So, what's the latest and greatest in recruiting world? SU football team's been on the move, man, lately, getting some good guys here, Stephen.
Yeah, it was slow. It's kind of been a slow cycle just because no one to do in-person recruiting until June. And if you're college coaches, they just really want to see people in person. So I think Syracuse has gotten 3 or 4 commitments in the last couple of weeks. And there have been people who came up and visited on campus. Jeremiah Wilson, a defensive back from Florida, great example. He hit a growth spurt last fall. He's listed 5'10" a lot of places online. He's 6 feet now. The coaches saw him on campus, and he's committed.
Yeah.
They got Makai Mason, one of their top linebacker targets. Another Florida guys. They're pretty excited about that. I think that's a really good get. They ended up, I think they probably hosted about 20 guys in June. So I think there's still kind of some of that trickle down coming. They got Quan Peterson, a defensive back from South Carolina, who they hosted late in the month. So the class is starting to come together. It was slow, and then now you're kind of seeing it progress. It just feels like they normally get a run like this in May, or maybe like late April, early May, and then just pushed back a little bit. So, I think on the defensive side of the ball, they've gotten some of their targets that they really like, and they've obviously missed on some as well. Offense has been a little slower. They missed on their priority quarterback commit. Again, second straight year, Duke beat them out for their top guy, Henry Bellin from New York City. Syracuse is going to have to pivot there. That's kind of been the way it's gone. Like the last 4 cycles, they've really, really struggled to land their priority targets, and it's a big problem if you're kind of branding your program around an offense. But it's also understandable why maybe a quarterback wouldn't want to come to Syracuse right now if you've watched any of the games the last 2 years.
So let's get right to the Syracuse football season in 2021. What are your realistic expectations for this team? Obviously, the dome restrictions have been lifted. Thank goodness we're getting out of this thing. We're gonna have a normal year. It's gonna feel so good. I know it's gonna just feel amazing for you to be back at the games. It's gonna be great to see it. How many people go to the games? That's another story. But what do you think about this team going in? Highs, lows, everything in between. Is this a bowl team? What are we looking at with this program in the coming season here, Stephen?
Yeah, I mean, the bar is set low, to be quite frank. I mean, the odds makers, I think, have them penciled around 4 wins, which, is fair. They went 1-10 last year. The offense has been, anemic the last couple of seasons, really since the 2018 season. Some controllable variables, some uncontrollable variables. I think the year is going to go as the offensive line does.
Yep.
I mean, I know that's kind of what we've been saying, but you can't score.
That's right.
Your line can't hold up in the ACC. I mean, that 10-win season kind of came while a lot of other ACC programs were down or rebuilding or restructuring their rosters, and Syracuse has just not been able to hold up the last couple of years. The biggest reason has been the front 5. Obviously they started Chris Elmore at left guard for most of the year last year. No knock on Chris, but but it's either like we don't have enough offensive linemen to play, or our fullback playing guard, and like this is the ACC. So it was really just as bad as it could get last year. Now, Syracuse tried to go out and grab a transfer in Willie Tyler from Texas, who's a redshirt sophomore who has not played FBS snap. He decommitted over the summer, basically right before he was supposed to arrive. So, that was someone who was expected to come in and compete for a starting job. Now it's kind of looking like the group they had last year. Everyone is healthy, at least for the most part. All the major contributors are healthy. Chris Bleich will be in the mix this year. He'll be eligible. Florida transfer from 2 years ago. Dakota Davis, again, he missed much of last season with an injury. He'll be healthy. Potentially your 2 starting guards there. So internally, there's optimism that group is going to be better. In turn, if your offensive line's better, your quarterbacks stay on their feet, whether it's Tommy DeVito or Garrett Schrader or a combination of the two, you actually give those guys a chance to succeed back there. But if that offensive line can't figure it out, Aaron Service seems like he'll be starting once again. If he can't rebound from what was a really rough year last year, I don't know how they really win more. I don't know how they hit that over on 3.5-ish games. It's hard to imagine. But if you can get that offensive line moving, I think there are skill position players who can do well. Sean Tucker had a really, really good spring. I mean, if you give him a little bit of room to work with, I think he can be one of the better running backs in the ACC. You got Taj Harris back on the outside. And I think the defense is ready to take a step forward. I think the linebackers are really, really good. The D-line gets its veterans back. They should be all right. And you'll have some holes to plug in the secondary, and that'll pop up at times. But I expect the 3-3-5 defense to take a step forward this year. It's just really whether that offensive line can set that side of the ball up to have a chance for success that we don't know.
The other problem with the offensive line, I mean, when you get this poor of an O-line and you're trying to run that system, I mean, Steven, it's just not a good match, man. Trying to run that system with a line that performs the way they do, that's so mechanically off, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly hasn't. I hear you, man. I get it. That's the biggest crux of the team. I mean, you really can't win at the Power 5 level with a really bad offensive line. And Dino has thrown some wrinkles into what he does. I mean, they didn't try and go fast last year, but yeah, if you're trying to run up-tempo system with a short-handed offensive line, you're kind of exacerbating your own issues. So I know they've tried to recruit more offensive linemen. I think they signed 4 or 5 high school guys last year, but you can't, flip that switch overnight. That takes a couple of years to really build that veteran depth, and that's what they had in 2018. They had six guys who basically played regular snaps. They rotated 3 in at guard, and they stayed healthy the whole year. So, that's what you need. You need senior linemen. They're not going to go out and recruit a stud offensive lineman. They're just few and far between. You need to develop them, whether it's recruiting tall guys and bulking them up or bigger guys and getting them athletic enough to bend and move. You need to be able to produce offensive linemen, and they haven't been able to do that really very well. I mean, they switched offensive line coaches over the offseason. Mike Schmidt in there now, a longtime San Diego State assistant who's very close with Tony White, the defensive coordinator. Maybe, his philosophy will click with the players that have a little bit better. But, it's been really bad. They've been arguably the worst offensive line in the Power 5 the last couple of years. I know they got a lot of guys who want to prove that narrative wrong, and maybe they will, but it's been a recipe for disaster, and it's really prevented them from doing all the things that have made the veer and shoot scheme, and particularly the Baylor version of it that Dino has modeled some of his system off of, so successful. You just don't have the time and the space to do the things that you want to do.
Tell you what, the ACC, I can't figure out. I mean, is it going to be a little bit like last year? Will it be a little bit more down even? I mean, how far up can it go? How do you see the conference this year, Stephen?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know. I feel like there are kind of a lot of teams that are kind of middling, stuck in the middle. Like Syracuse at the bottom of kind of that hierarchy, where kind of in the past maybe there've been a few teams that are clearly, kind of toward the bottom. So I think Syracuse will have a lot of potentially winnable games, right? I mean, you're maybe a touchdown underdog, a field goal underdog. Like, I think there will be, if things don't unravel early in the season, a lot of opportunities for them to have reasonable upsets, but there's you go through the ACC slate. It's not like you're going through there and saying, "Oh, Syracuse might really be favored here." No, that's the start of the season is really their opportunity to get wins, opening up at Ohio, hosting Rutgers week 2. I think that'll be a really big game. Greg Schiano, a chance to kind of make some noise and something to sell on the recruiting trail his second go round there, and for Syracuse a chance to beat an old rival and kind of prove it here for Dino Babers. So they got those two, and then Liberty and Albany. So I think Syracuse needs to be 3-1 in those 4 games to have a real shot at realistic shot at getting the 6 wins. And I mean, Liberty might be favored in that game. Rutgers might be favored in that game. I mean, I think the Ohio game at Ohio opened as a pick'em. So Vegas is not respecting Syracuse at all. And it's hard to pencil in those wins once conference play starts.
Stephen Bailey covers the Orange football team and men's hoops for 247 Sports. Do they say 247 more or 24/7? Which one do they use more?
24/7.
It is 24/7. Okay.
That's how I've always said it.
24/7.
You think that's how it's said, right?
All right. Yeah. Well, yeah. Right. Exactly. I've heard a lot of 247 too, but 247 Sports. Get him on Twitter at Stephen_Bailey, the number 1, and of course at 247 Sports. Both must follow. Stephen, couple more quickies for you here. I remember back in early May, you did a piece on, the physical spring ball of the Dino Babers era that it was, maybe the most physical of his era. Why was it that way? Did they step it up that way for some reason?
Yeah, basically yes. I think it was something that started with the coaching staff and kind of went down. And the biggest emphasis was in the trenches and being physical, hitting more. They got really good roster depth this year compared to a normal Syracuse year because all the seniors last year got the extra year of eligibility. So I think they have 4 senior defensive linemen who came back for either a 5th or 6th season and 1 senior offensive lineman who came back. So a couple extra bodies gives you a chance to rotate more guys in. And at the skill positions, they have tons of guys. They got a bunch of extra bodies they don't normally have. So they've structured their practices around that and tried to get in as many reps as possible, different position groups. And I think from like a technique standpoint and an emphasis standpoint, the offensive line is being pushed to be more aggressive. I think that is just a coaching philosophy thing. We'll see. We'll see how it works out. I mean, everyone likes to say you're aggressive, but I mean, sometimes if you have a zone blocking scheme, you don't want people getting too far up the field, depending on the flow of a play. So I know aggression, physicality is being preached on the offensive side of the ball. On the defensive side of the ball, this started last year, but they do want people to be reacting quickly and explosively. Whereas before that, there were some more read and react tendencies built in under Brian Ward and that Tampa 2 style scheme. So I think working out on the defensive side of the ball, just building new habits, right? If you're so used to like reading the running back or looking for these 3 things before snap and immediately after the snap, you're reading and reacting. That's what you were taught to do. Well, not in the 3-3-5. It's you might have your pre-snap read, and then you know what you're doing, and you go. And what you'll hear preached in the 3-3-5 is everyone plays at 100%. If you're off, someone behind you is supposed to be there to clean it up. The linebackers, of course, the safeties behind them. So, stylistically, the way that the players are being instructed is to be more aggressive, is to be more physical, and so it produced that. And look, that's not to say that it's going to work. That's just kind of the emphasis that was pushed forward. And I think, particularly coming off a 1 in 10 year, I do think there is kind of the human side of that, and I think it helps guys kind of get fired up and focused. And the players, talking to the players at the end of spring ball, they felt really good about how it went. So, yeah, I mean, that's what's being emphasized, and I think it's affected both the feel of the program and the vibe of the players as much as schematically X's and O's what the team is trying to do.
Final one for you in about a minute or so. Where do you see the swing part of the season? Whether it swings great, swings bad. Is it in the beginning? Do they have to get off to the big start? Is it somewhere in the middle with the ACC schedule? Is it at the back end? Where is the swing part where we're like, yep, that's what this team, this is this team right here. This is the team. We know now. Where's the swing part of 2021?
Oh, man. I mean, you could carve it up a few different ways. I mean, I really think if they want to be a bowl team, they need to start at 3-1. So I think there's that immediate, box that needs to be checked out of the gate. To me, this isn't really like a schedule thing. The other box is really simply health of your offensive line and quarterback. So at week 8, do you have 5 offensive linemen who you trust and one Power 5 caliber quarterback? That's right now only Tommy DeVito and Garrett Schrader, who is healthy. And, the last couple of years, Syracuse really hasn't been able to say that. So, I just think they need that to give themselves a chance to win in conference against basically anybody. That's just what I would say. And we haven't talked a lot about the quarterbacks, but that's why they went out and got the Mississippi State transfers. They've needed multiple quarterbacks every year since Ryan Nassib left in 2012. Since Syracuse entered the ACC, they haven't had a quarterback take every significant snap in a season. That's not going to change this fall. So they need, however that competition shakes out, they need to have someone capable of running the full offense late in the year. They can't be leaning on Rex Culpepper, Clayton Welch, Zach Mahoney. I think the freshmen have a chance to pan out, Dylan Markowitz and Jacobian Morgan and Justin Lamson, but I'm not sure any of them are quite ready this fall. And, if one of them has to play, they're probably the third quarterback. And if you've gotten to that point, things with the offensive line are probably so bad that it's really not a good environment to throw them into anyways. And that's how Syracuse has finished, 4 of its last 6 seasons or something like that. So, those are the boxes. Got to start, 3-1. And, you got to keep a quarterback upright through at least 3/4 of the season.
Yeah, very well said. I couldn't agree more. Stephen Bailey covers the Orange football team, men's hoops, recruiting, 247 Sports on Twitter at Stephen_Bailey, the number 1. Steve-O, really appreciate it, buddy. Hope to see you soon, whether it's at the Dome or somewhere else. And, hey, let's get back to normal this season, man.
Yeah, anytime, Mike. Thanks as always.
The ML Sports Platter is brought to you by our great friends at the Allen Angus Pub, Liverpool Physical Therapy, and Bryant and Stratton College. Hey, by the way, a huge, huge thank you to the Swan and Whitaker families for their support of the platform, as well as our good friends at Welch & Company Jewelers. Log on to welchjewelers.com today. Shop the showcase. Welch & Company Jewelers is a proud ML Sports Platter sponsor. welchjewelers.com. welchjewelers.com. Big time thanks to Stephen Bailey, covering Orange sports and recruiting. Does a terrific job. Hit me on Twitter at MikeLSports and download and subscribe to this podcast all over the major platforms on Spotify, Google, Apple, Stitcher, Deezer, and anywhere else you get your pods on your smartphone device. Thanks again for listening, and as I always tell you, enjoy the games.